Mirror man, you twist and turn my mind until I don't know who I am. Mirror man.
Good morning and welcome to a Thursday therapy session. I'm joined by Jacob Hawley. Matt Kandela is back. We're going free to air with a big podcast today. It's the international break. Martin Ødegaard is injured. Oh my God, we've got a lot to talk about today. How you doing, Jacob?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. I'm good. I'm ready for this. I've been looking forward to this ever since Saturday. So yeah, I'm good.
Fantastic, Matt. Good to have you back on the free to airs. You feeling good?
I'm feeling good, mate. Yeah, we did a member pod yesterday. That was a fun one. That was a nice little warm up for this one, the big one.
Yeah, you got a bit of extra holiday that bled into pre-season, bred into the season, a bit like the Arsene Wenger when he bring players back. And the only team that didn't have their players ready for game day one was Wenger. That was you this pre-season. Yeah. Have you missed it?
I just channeled Arsene Wenger. You know, just get back after the first international break.
Is it a bit odd to you guys with all this money that's been swilling about in football for the last 6-7 years? No one said it'd be quite glamorous to put Arsene Wenger in charge, even just a badly run club. Why did no one throw 20 million at him and say, "Come on, Arsene, let's do it. You can spend whatever you want"?
I think it's because he absolutely loves this FIFA role. I mean, It's great. I mean, for some, if you like power, the idea of just being on a plane every day, everyone pandering, not really being responsible for anything, I think it must be quite nice. Dream gig.
Did you think he'd get back into football? A Newcastle or an Everton?
No, I always got the vibe that it was kind of us or nothing for him. And he loved talking about how much he would turn down other clubs, how he turned down Madrid, how he turned down PSG. And I at first I was like, is that... I think he's been accused of arrogance, and I thought, is that just him wanting us to think he's in demand? But I think he's genuinely got an almost unhealthy love for Arsenal Football Club. And I say that as one of 3 podcasters who speaks about the club every day of the fucking week. But seriously, I don't think he can move on. Like, I honestly, I don't think he could do another club. I thought he'd go international, and maybe if the France job had come up, maybe he would have done. But I never saw him doing another club, and I don't think he ever will now.
We broke his
74
heart,
years old. 74 years old. Time flies.
Matt's right. We broke him. We broke his heart.
Arsenal broke him.
Pedro broke his heart.
I did.
Yeah, you.
I did. I was right. I won't go into it. I know people get upset. Someone quit the Patreon last week because me and Johnny said that we were going to spend more time on Threads. They thought we were an abomination because we didn't believe in free speech. More people will quit if I slander Arsene Wenger, so I won't do it. He had a good run, and we can move on because there's plenty of topics to get into today. But the place where we're going to start first is very obvious.
Hottest of takes.
The hottest of takes.
The AOP, hottest of takes. Make it spicy.
Jacob, you've been out for a week. Get back into the mixer and give us something very spicy.
Mate, I think we're a completely one-sided team. And I think we have been for quite a long time, actually. I think when you look at Arsenal, what we do on the pitch, the right-hand side, absolutely brilliant. Everything's good on the right-hand side. The left-hand side, it hasn't been right for a really, really long time, if we're really honest with ourselves. And after this international break, when Mikel Merino finally gets his cast off, when we might see Raheem Sterling start on the left-hand side, and by the way, I think he might start and stay there. And then I think it's time to see Calafiori get a go as well. Because as much as I tipped him to have a massive season, don't think it's happened for him quite yet. And every time Calafiori comes on the pitch, he looks like a monster. I think it's time to upgrade that left-hand side. Get Declan Rice away from that bloody left 8 position. I don't want to go into that. Actually, you guys have already spoken about it a lot. But I don't think it's a coincidence that he gives away a silly foul like that, loses his head twice for 2 yellow cards because he's so high up the pitch. Get the left-hand side sorted. Get Sterling on the left wing. Get Calafiori at left back. If it's Merino eventually at left 8, great. If it has to be someone else in the meantime, good. But we need to sort out that left-hand side.
Pretty spicy there, Matt. Get Declan out. Get him back into that number 6 role. We're not going to see him there for quite a while because Marino's probably out for 6 to 8 weeks. Matt, where are you going to take your spicy take this morning?
I am going to say the player of the season in the Premier League so far, David Raya. He's our player of the season. He's the best goalkeeper in the Premier League now. 2 saves in the Premier League Save of the Month competition. Elite distribution, calmness personified, never distracted by pigeons. Doesn't have a dad on a podcast every week, and has a nose that would make Michael Jackson proud. When you look at this deal, it is absolutely phenomenal. Kepa was 70 million. Alisson was 66 million. Edison was 40 million. We got this guy for 27 million pounds. And I'm going to put this out there. Is this Arteta's best value signing ever?
I mean, that is spicy, but I like it. I mean, what did Alisson and Edison cost between them?
Well,
140
Alisson was 66 million. Edison was 40 million. They're both 2 years older than him.
And they were bought earlier. They weren't bought in an inflated market.
In an inflated market. What a signing he's proven to be. He won us the game at Villa Park. Some of the saves this season. I mean, 2 in the Premier League Save of the Month competition, but there were others that have been incredible. Do you remember we were saying I don't think he can save anything. Ramsdale's a better shot stopper. I mean, it was an unpopular move at the time, but now I think we've got the best goalkeeper in the Premier League.
Woo! Okay, I like that. Two good hot takes to start. My hot take is fresh off the press. I am a little bit concerned that we've been gassing on all summer about no cover for Bukayo Saka, really getting into some serious panic mode about it. And the one position that we've completely forgot about is the one position that no one ever considers will be vacant. I've got deep concerns that Arsenal haven't thought about a backup for Martin Ødegaard. We know that he took an almighty wallop in the Brighton game. The Norway coach is saying that he thinks that he's carrying an injury. While we're all concerned that Declan Rice isn't going to be playing in the North London derby, I think a bigger concern for us and a more dramatic impact to our team could be, what the fuck do we do if Martin Ødegaard is injured? Because the heir apparent at the moment seems to be Waneri. People throw out Trossard, but it seems to be Waneri. So I don't think you're putting Trossard into that position in a big North London derby. Then I started going, would Sterling play there? Would we re-gear our team around something like that? But he's not the guy either. So I'm in a bit of a struggle because I don't see an obvious choice to pick up the slack of Martin Ødegaard, and it certainly isn't Kai Havertz.
It was Kai, wasn't it? A Newcastle away last year.
Yeah, it was.
And it doesn't feel right.
No, do you know what I would do, or what I'd love to see? Maybe not to start a game, but if we had to take him off at 60, and what if we hadn't gone down to 10 the other day? What I'd have liked to have seen, I'd love to see Saka there. I'd love to see Saka given the end of a game there. I thought what was quite interesting at the end of the Brighton games, it felt like Saka came inside a bit and just formed a bit of a 2 with Kai Havertz. If we're just trying to bang the door down and get a goal, I would love to see Saka come inside a little bit, and maybe Sterling goes wide right with Martinelli wide left or Trossard wide left. I'd like to see that. I don't think you can start a game like that, but I'd love to see us end a game like that.
That's a good
I just
point.
feel like you want to see Saka as close to the goal as possible. He's one of the players who, if he's in, I trust him to make the decisive impact. He's a big moment player. I don't know if I want him further away from goal.
Well, I think bringing him inside could bring him closer, right? I mean, it's his birthday today, and I've seen Arsenal are like sharing all sorts of content, and you forget he scores so many of those goals from the edge of the box, so many screamers, so many just drops a shoulder and then bang, bottom corner. Like that's his spot. I mean, I say that's his spot. It's also his spot when he roofs it into the roof of the net from close range with his right foot. He's got so many trademark finishes now, Saka. But you're right, Peter. There's no obvious option. There's no obvious option at all. And I don't want to say we've left ourselves short, but I was surprised that we lost Smith Rowe and Vieira same window, and that Vieira's was alone. Because we did start a game with Vieira instead of Ødegaard last season. I think we won it, and so I am surprised that we've left ourselves short again like that. It's a lot of faith in Waneri.
It is, yeah. And that's a complicated position to play that requires a lot of experience, a lot of coaching. I mean, Martin Ødegaard came from Madrid. It took him 18 months, 2 years to really get into the full swing of things. So be interesting to see what happens if the knock does carry over. All right, let's move into the first topic of conversation because I do think it is quite interesting. I've been reading around chairmen and CEOs doing their little pieces. There was a really good bit from Tony Bloom in The Athletic. They spent £198 million this transfer window. That puts them number 2 in Europe, just behind Chelsea, who had a massive outlay again. And the gist of the conversation is Tony Bloom said, he basically said European clubs are broke, and there were a whole bunch of players that were undervalued that we'd never normally get the opportunity to sign. So we probably won't do this again, but we took advantage of an extremely depressed market. So my question to you, Matt, is do you think Arsenal maybe missed in this window by not being as aggressive as we potentially could be? I mean, there's no cover for Ødegaard. We didn't get a backup striker. And we only managed to get a loan move for the wide position. Do you think we might look back on this next summer with a bit of concern?
I think we did miss. I don't think we completed the job. I think we did a great job at getting some deadwood out the club. But I think I saw today that we've got 21 players or 22 players. It's one of those two. We have got the smallest squad in the Premier League, the smallest squad. And we've got one of the most congested fixture schedules. One of the things that's happened over the last couple of seasons is we haven't had the squad to commit anything to the League Cup or the FA Cup. And I think we would have liked to have seen something happen in one of those competitions. I think when you're a really big club, when you look at Liverpool, when you look at Manchester City, they go full throttle at everything. So I'm disappointed we couldn't add a couple of extra bodies. And I think you're right. I think the strangest piece of it was letting Fabio Vieira and Emile Smith-Rowe go and not having somebody come in who could do a job there, because I really feel like we went from having one of the strongest midfields in the Premier League to now I don't really know what we're doing with it. And Marino didn't quite feel like the blockbuster signing that we needed to take our midfield to the next level in a way that what was the other sausage? Zubimendi would have. I feel like Zubimendi would have really lifted the midfield and really given us something different. I feel like we got the lesser of the two in that deal.
Jacob, when you see Brighton dropping a casual 198 million, do you look at Arsenal's transfer window where we kind of netted out pretty even and think that maybe there were missed opportunities there, that maybe we could have gone harder, that maybe we could have taken Arsenal to the promised land squad-wise? Matt's saying that we have one of the smallest squads in the Premier League this season. Do you have any worries that maybe we're putting a lot of trust in quite a number of players that are easily broken?
Well, I mean, I just, while you were speaking now, I just quickly flicked through the players that Brighton have bought. I'm not sure there's any that we would have really wanted. Do you know what I mean? there's no one. I understand where Tony Bloom's coming from. There's no one there that I'm going, oh God, that's an opportunity we could have gone for. You know, there's some decent players in there. You know, Mintez come in from Newcastle, looks decent. I like the look of that Ferdy Kadioglu we were linked with quite a lot. They got him.
I like that Belieber guy.
Yeah. You know, he's a big guy. He looks like a good player, but I don't really feel like this transfer window just felt dead. Like, never mind Brighton, I can't really think of anyone who went anywhere where I'm like, why weren't we there for him? Can you guys? Is there a player you can think of that moved in this window that you look at and go, oh, that could have improved us?
I don't know. No, I don't think so. Me and Matt had a little game yesterday where we went through Chelsea's squad, and you're like, for the outlay that they've put down. You know, the interesting thing with the Chelsea squad, Matt, I was thinking about it after our conversation. There were a lot of players that we would have liked that now they're in that Chelsea setup. They don't feel quite right. I still can't quite believe that Enzo and Caicedo fetched 200 million in transfer fees, because Caicedo, you know, he looks good in spats, but he doesn't really look up to the level. Enzo hasn't really hit the mark. Do you think if I was to move this question on a little bit further and heading back to the sort of the Ballon d'Or nominations, there was a bit of a comparison to Ballon d'Or announcements 5 years ago, and you had all of these major names. Do you think football is going through a bit of a reset at the moment? Do you think we're in a post-Messi, Ronaldo era where they've dominated the scene for so long? We're trying to find out who the new heroes are. There's no Denilson, not Denilson, Neymar.
Thank God.
Imagine.
There's no Denilson. Football's
The
gone.
game's gone. There's no
You know-
Denilsons anymore.
If you were to say, you think about Van Dijk's on the way out, Salah is on the way out, Kevin De Bruyne is on the way out, Ronaldo, Messi. There's a whole generation of wildly talented players that are gone, and now our kind of superstars like Rodri in the top 3 for favourites for Ballon d'Or. I know he's a good player, but it doesn't feel sexy like maybe it did 5 years ago. Are we just in a bit of a lull, Matt?
I don't think so. I think a lot of it is just there's a bit of like bias to how we remember things. I think nostalgia is a really powerful emotional force when you think about it.
Yeah.
I think we were debating Jude Bellingham, right? And we were being a little bit down on him yesterday at the idea of him being it. But the reality is he was scoring last minute winners in the Classico. He was scoring overhead kicks in the last minute to win, put England through in the Euros. And we're getting on his back. I think sometimes when you're really close to it, you don't quite recognize the quality of what you're seeing. So I don't think so. I think we always hark back to a different time. Oh, I remember. I wish it was like it was in the old days. I think there's that piece. I think also we've moved to a much more systems-based approach.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's been the big shift in club football. Even clubs at the bottom of the top leagues are really well drilled, really well coached. We talk a different language when we're analyzing football. We're talking about XG, we're talking about field tilt, we're talking about, we've got like a huge amount of data now, whereas before it was just a different time. You know, it was all about Ronaldinho and his amazing tricks and all of that sort of stuff. So I think the quality is probably improved actually. But maybe the players are given slightly less rein to demonstrate individuality.
Jacob,
think
there's
you're
only
right.
one team in the world that doesn't play system-based football. That's Real Madrid. And majority of their players seem to be in the top 10 favourites. Do you think that is the reason that we're not cooing over the new
I think-
Ronaldo or Messi's?
I think it just means that those players stand out a bit more in the pitch, and they hence they get nominated for these kind of things. I think if a Bernardo Silva were to go to Madrid, he would get nominated for a Ballon d'Or. You know, I think some of the players, the kind of glue players who really hold together these system teams, and I think it's a long time coming that Rodri gets recognised properly, but I think there are a lot of players that kind of slip into these system teams who just make it tick. Who, if they were at Madrid and they were let off the leash a little bit, maybe they could be superstars. Maybe they could be players that get nominated for individual awards. I do think that we're at a point where there've always been superstar coaches, but I think those superstar coaches were more personality-led in the past. I think you talk about Alex Ferguson. He played a 4-4-2, but it was about his grit. It was about his determination to get his team to win. It was about his man management. Wenger played absolutely gorgeous football, but everyone knew that you could get through Arsenal. Whereas I think now it's the rise of the super coach. You know, in the Artetas, the Pep Guardiolas, the Xabi Alonsos, these guys are the superstars of football nowadays, and it's because they've created systems where the individuals aren't as important. And when you can play superstar individuals and they don't embarrass you. When City went out of the Champions League last year to Real Madrid, they weren't embarrassed by Real Madrid's individuals, were they? They were edged over 2 legs, but I don't.
They were the better
Vinny
team.
Jr. I think they were the better team, and I don't think Vinny Jr. absolutely trounced Kyle Walker. I thought it was a good battle. Similarly to the way when we play City, when we face Haaland now, we deal with him. The truth is, as much as we love Arteta and as much as we love the football that our team plays, this football is about nullifying the individuals that you face. That's what Arteta's system does. Is what Guardiola's system does. It's what Xabi Alonso's system does. And it's just a trend. I see stuff.
Will art ever come back?
Well, yeah, but it will. It's a trend. It will flip round again. Like I see people on Twitter go, "Oh, XG, it's the end of football. Guardiola, Fraudiola is destroyed." No, it hasn't. It hasn't destroyed anything. It's just a trend. And I think you're right to point out, if you look at the list, if you look at the Ballon d'Or list, it feels like we're at a point where there's a lot of 35-year-olds and then some kids. Tony Kroos is still on there. So is Yamal. Saka is correctly on there. Where's Saka going to be in 5 years if he's not knocking on the door to win it? I think it's a few things. I think it's a bit of a system thing. I think it's a bit of coaching that nullifies individuals. And I think it's also we're just waiting for the next crop of really amazing talents to hit their peak now. It feels like we're in a bit of a trough. And I think that's COVID related, to be honest with you. I think that's because there were players like Kai Havertz, who was at that kind of 21 age when COVID kicked in, had a bad experience at a club like Chelsea and suddenly went through a dip. Imagine if Kai Havertz had been under Arteta for the last 4 years. Where would he be? He'd be on that list, wouldn't he?
Hopefully he's going to be on that list next year.
Well, there you go.
We like it. All right. Okay. That's some good chat. Let's move on to something more Arsenal specific. Kieran Tierney is back in the mixer, boys. The forgotten man. Got a terrible injury at the Euros. He's a good player. We hope that he maybe get a loan move to pump his value. Went to Sociedad last year, but he is back in the squad and he got a Champions League number. Guys, Kieran Tierney being back in the Champions League mixer, is this performative theatre, or could he have a role in the squad moving forward, or do we think it's passed him over? He is a relic of the past.
Do you know the saddest thing? The one time I think Tierney would have got on the pitch was Brighton when we went to 5 at the back because we were 10 men. Like that was the one time where you go, oh, actually, he'd have been perfect. We brought Zinchenko on to kind of play left wing back. That would have been perfect for Tierney. And God knows if that's going to happen again this season. I love having him around. I love the fact that he's around. I do see a world in which we quietly tear up the contract and he goes back to Celtic. But as we've already said, we're quite light on numbers and Tomiyasu's permanently cropped. So maybe you have to keep him as the 8th defender.
Matt, what do you make of Kieran Tierney being in and around the squad? Is it good to have a backup when you've got players like Zinchenko, Tomiyasu, and Timber coming back from a massive injury?
I don't really have much feeling about it. I think the interesting thing is we've suddenly decided that Kieran Tierney isn't a good player. For me, the reason that Kieran Tierney fell out of favour was because he couldn't stay fit. It was completely unreliable. I mean, Tomiyasu has managed to do the same and managed to stay in good favour. But Kieran Tierney is not a bad player. He really isn't. I think he's got a lot to offer. For me, I could see him playing at a club like West Ham. I could see him playing at a club like Tottenham. I think he's at that level, but he's just made of glass. And because of that, Arteta has deemed him unreliable. I don't think he's got bad technique. I think he can get up and down the line. I think he can whip in a good cross. I think he can score the odd screamer. So I'm really surprised that someone hasn't come in. But I think when you're looking at it, supposing the transfer fee's 15 million, it's like you're paying double because he's going to miss 60% of games.
Such a shame, isn't it? His body really has failed him. But it does go to show as well. It's like we bought him knowing that he had injury problems. And it's very rare. I can't remember a manager having good luck with buying injured players since Arsene Wenger. He bought Marco Overmars and he'd had terrible injury problems. I think we got him at 26 years old and we got a good few seasons out of him. He bought Kanu after he had a heart attack. I don't know whether that was a raging success, but he definitely had a habit of picking up players that weren't that reliable. He got a lot of reliability out of them, but it seems in this modern game, it's so harsh and brutal on the body that if you're not made of steel, like Kai Havertz, you don't make it at Arsenal. That's why it's going to be interesting to watch Calafiori as well. He's had one good season of football since his major injury. So it's going to be interesting to see how his body holds up to the rigours.
You sort of touched on it with the Ødegaard thing. And I think we did say it at the end of last season. We were extremely lucky with injuries last season. Saliba played every single minute. Ødegaard, no injuries. Bukayo Saka limped off every game, but I think in the end he missed about 2 league games. Barely anything. And one of them was the last game of the season. So we were extraordinarily lucky. And I think we said you can't bank on these players being able to sustain that workload again all season. My big fear is that I'm not sure we've addressed that, because ultimately it's just a fact. You know, Mo Salah missed a couple of months of last season. It just will happen. And I'm worried about our durability, especially when you look at, I feel like we've been a little bit unlucky with injuries already this season. You know, Gabby Jesus getting injured before the first game, or before the second game, Marino with a fall, Ødegaard with a bad knock. Just got this horrible feeling that the luck might be slightly turning on the injuries. It's the curse of Ten Hag. It's come back.
Did I hear a cat?
I challenge the luck thing.
Who's got a cat? Is there a cat? Is it? Does anyone own a cat?
Yeah, I own a cat, but she shouldn't be here. Sorry.
I was like, he was messaging earlier. He's like, is that a cat? I was like, no, I think that's a New York fire truck.
Get out. Out of it. Go on. Sorry.
Matt, on the Champions League squad, Martinelli's been given the number 10. I didn't know you got special Champions League numbers. Is that symbolic? Is that like Zinchenko getting the number 17? What do we make of
Who's got the
Martinelli?
11 then?
No idea. But
Why
I
have they
read it.
done that? Why have they changed Martinelli's number?
I don't know. I've got no idea, unless it was an accident. But that's what I read a headline saying it. I didn't know that you submitted literal squad numbers.
Okay, we're getting it up now.
Before we go into numbers, I know my cat interrupted us there. Can I quickly challenge the injury thing? Because I don't think we were lucky. I don't think we were lucky with injuries last season. I think what happened last season was exactly what should have happened. Our injury-prone players were injured the whole season, and our players that we bought because they never get injured never got injured. Thomas Partey missed the whole season last year, basically. Was Gabby Jesus ever fit last year?
He was fit very rarely.
In and out. But
He was
never in good shape. Timber, we lost on the first day of the season to an ACL. I don't think we were that lucky with injury.
All right.
So I can't find a list of the numbers.
No, I think it was an error on the Champions League website because
it's on the Mirror picked it up. So they said Martinelli handed new number. My only thing I can think of is that Raheem Sterling is given the 11 in the Champions League.
It's not. I'm on the Champions League website. It must have been a mistake. Arsenal fans are pretty quick on those errors, but I did want to draw on the Martinelli thing. How big do you think this season is for Martinelli, Jacob? Like, he is starting to turn into a bit of a forgotten man at Arsenal. He's not injured at the moment, but we brought in Sterling. We know Sterling can play on the left. Trossard has been absolutely on fire. How important is it for Martinelli to make the most of his minutes for the rest of the season? Or do you think we're just creating problems that don't exist?
I don't think we're creating problems that don't exist, because I think the fact that he dropped from having a 15-goal season the season before last to 6 last season, that was a problem. And those 9 goals could have won us the league. So I don't think we're creating a problem that didn't exist. I think the fact that we've got Sterling on a loan, I mean, A, that's to do with his wages, but B, I think that's because we're not giving up on Martinelli. And I actually love the fact that Sterling's here for a season, because if you're Gabby Martinelli, who better is there to learn from? And by the way, this isn't the first time that Gabriel Martinelli's been set a challenge by Arteta to get back into this team. I remember after that knee injury, he was out of the team for a long time. Couldn't get back on the pitch. Then he went up against Emile Smith-Rowe, who was our hero at the time, who was super Emile Smith-Rowe. We had songs about him and Saka. What did Gabby Martinelli do? He ripped the shirt off his back and sent him to Fulham. I'm not giving up on Martinelli at all. He's still got something that the rest of the squad hasn't got. He's still got pace that no one else in this team has got. And I love the fact that he's going to get to learn from Sterling. So I think Sterling, in terms of what Sterling's done over the last few years at City, let's ignore the Chelsea years, but that's exactly what we want Martinelli to be able to do, isn't it? To be someone who can beat a man from a standing position and who's a finisher from the left-hand side. Like, the goals that Sterling scores, that's exactly what I want Martinelli doing. Just blistering pace, finishing off moves, all the build-up on the right-hand side between Ødegaard, Saka and White, tiki-taka, across the box, bang, Martinelli finishes. That's exactly what I want. I'm not giving up on him at all. And that's another one. we say we didn't have injuries last season. He had a hole in his foot. He had a great big hole in his foot. And who knows how much that healed. I would love for one of us to be able to walk into the Arsenal dressing room and go, lucky with injuries last season, weren't we, lads? And I think Saka might turn around and point at his Achilles and go, I wasn't. I was having pain injections every single day. I think Martinelli might show us a big scar on the front of his foot going, nope, I had to have this closed every week. Ødegaard had stuff that he was dealing with last season. I don't give up on Martinelli at all. And I actually think he's 22. He's still a kid. What was Mo Salah doing at 22? Basel?
Just exited Basel. Just exited.
Yeah.
Come to Chelsea to get bin to Roma.
Plenty of time. Plenty of time. He's one. If there's one, and I don't mean this as a criticism to Martinelli, if there's a player who could do with a bit more training ground time, I think it's him. Learn your gears a little bit more. Learn when to start and stop. Go quick. I don't know about you. I watched Martinelli the last few months. He looks. I think a player like that, and it's a harsh comparison. Theo Walcott at his best was instinctive. And actually, I don't think Theo Walcott's a bad comparison for Martinelli. Superb pace, finishing things off. Gabby Martinelli over the last few months, every time he gets the ball, he looks like he's trying to decide between doing 7 different things. And by the time he's made a decision, he has to give up and just give the ball back to the fullback. I want him to get direct again. And coming on at the end of games, as he did against Palace in January last season when he scored 2 goals, that might suit him. I'm not giving up at all. I think this is going to work.
Matt, I don't know how you go against Jacob in this situation. That's a very big defense of Gabriel Martinelli. Why do you think he does look so indecisive on the pitch at the moment? I mean, it's a cold, hard fact. He's not doing what he did. He lost that instinctive edge that he had when he burst onto the scene as a number 9.
I got a good piece in my inbox this morning from, I think, Billy Carpenter.
I love Billy.
He did a big piece on Martinelli today. And I think when you analyze it, I thought there were some really, really good points in that. So I'm just going to repeat them, really, which was, we talked about at the start of the show, dysfunctional left-hand side. The whole thing doesn't quite work. And so he's certainly been the victim of that. Number 2 was, it feels like, you know, when you see young players come through, and I'm thinking Michael Owen, I'm thinking Wayne Rooney, I'm thinking those types of players where when you see them, it's like they're playing in the park, but they're young. And it feels like everything is instinctive and there's just talent overload. And then as they get coached, they are becoming better players, but it feels like there's like a dip before they sort of come again and explode. And I think it feels a bit like that with Martinelli, where, you know, growth is not a linear line. It's not just like from left to right, a nice like upward arrow. You know, there's ups and downs. And I think he's going to come back. I think he's going to come back stronger. I think one of the points was he looks like he's being told a lot of information. And at the moment, it's all a bit too much to think about. And like, I agree with Jacob, he just needs to get back to being instinctive, but he'll get his moment. And I think we said it before. He just needs a goal. I think as soon as the ball hits the back of the net, it doesn't matter how, scuffed in, off the goalkeeper, whatever, the belief will come flooding back. And I think once he gets 1, he'll get 2, he'll get 5, he'll get 10. But he just needs to get that first goal and get off and running. And I think it could be a great moment to do it in the North London derby. I don't think he scored it. I don't think he scored against Spurs. I can't recall him ever scoring against Spurs. Saka scored, Smith Rowe scored, Havertz, Gabby Jesus. I don't think Martinelli's ever got a goal. Would be great for him to get off the mark against Spurs and the confidence boost that would give him. So I'm hoping that he can make that happen.
I do like the thought about when you're being taught something new. Like I learn the drums. I don't play the drums. But if you get given 3 or 4 things to do and to think about at the same time, it's a real mess. And then all of a sudden it clicks. You're like, oh, okay, I now understand how all of the lessons are interconnected, and I can play something that sounds normal. And it actually looks like Martinelli is thinking about all of the things in his head at the same time. And we forget, if Mikel Arteta is good at anything, it's coaching wingers to be world class. And I actually thought the really interesting point where you made about the lessons is, do you remember when Martin Ødegaard, I think it was at the end of one of our seasons where we finished 5th, and he said, or Arteta said, he's been working on some things, but you won't see the impact of them until later. But when it happens, it's going to be special. And then bang, it happened with Ødegaard. It went from Ødegaard being challenged as a boring player every week to what does he do, to he never makes a key pass, to all of a sudden he's making the most key passes in the league. So I'm hoping that there's going to be that moment for Martinelli, because he works hard, loves being at Arsenal, and he's got all of the raw ingredients to be our version of Van Persie or Alexis Sanchez. So, and I actually really like the point you made, Jacob, about learning from Sterling. Like, I haven't got your propaganda on this, but me and Matt were gaslighting each other up last night about Sterling potentially being the greatest signing ever. Then Matt came in today and said that that was actually David Raya. Totally forgot his own line of communication. Let's get your hot take, because last time me and you spoke, Jacob, we were getting pretty spicy about Arsenal not signing a winger, and we were talking about Raheem Sterling and what he could bring to Arsenal. Now he's landed. You've had a moment to think about it. What do you make of this Raheem Sterling loan move? Is it genius, or are we just pumping a player for Chelsea?
I don't. There was an Edu quote after the signing where he said something along the lines of, "This isn't what we were going to do, but we've done it now." So I don't think you can quite say it's genius. But look, I think in football, one of the best things you can do is learn to adapt with your circumstances after things don't go with plan A. I think the use of Kai Havertz is a great example of that. We clearly brought him in as a left 8. He's become a striker. Arteta's gone with it and stuck with it, and it really works. And I think we've seen in the past the success that we've had by going to plan B in the transfer market. Whether this was plan B, C, D, E, however far down the list Sterling was, the more you look at it, the more you say, this is someone who really gives us all the things we want. I mean, if this guy was 26, we'd have paid a lot of money for him. I still think he's got a lot of the pace over the first 5 yards. I don't think you're going to see him tearing away like Martinelli did against Chelsea all those years ago, running the length of the pitch on his own. But I do think over a few yards, and especially when we're trying to break down a team and he's on the touchline and he's got to beat a fullback, I think he can probably do that better than either Trossard or Martinelli can from the left. I think from the right-hand side, what he can do, which is really important for us, is receive the ball under pressure, the way that Saka can, and turn out of trouble. He's an amazing presser. His goal-scoring numbers last season were unbelievable. I mean, I didn't realise how good his goal-scoring has been over his career. Did you know he's the 19th top scorer in the Premier League ever?
Repeat that?
He's the 19th highest scorer in the Premier League.
What's he got, like 161 goals or something? What's his number?
I should check this because I heard this on, I can't remember what podcast it was. I think it was Totally Football. So it could be absolute bollocks.
You know, he had a season where he scored 31 goals
I can see
in
Matt
the Premier
typing.
League, I think.
But mate, he's been around forever, so it makes sense.
Yeah.
This to me just makes so much sense, and the deal that we've got, 100 grand a week, we're paying him less than we're paying Ramsdale. I love it, and I love his character. I've always liked Raheem Sterling's character. He's always seemed like a really good guy. I love the fact that we need experience. Like, we could have bought Nico Williams, and it just didn't work. He had 6
123
goals
Premier
last
League
season.
goals.
I don't know
123.
where.
It's I mean, quite high. Not many people are in the Premier League for long enough to get 379 appearances. 181 career goals so far.
So, look, this guy's done everything. He's won everything. He's been everywhere. He's played every top team. He's scored enough fucking goals against us that it's just nice to not have him playing against us for a season. I'm fully gassed on it. But you make a very good point, Pete. We were so desperate, I'd have been gassed on anyone. I was just checking the Ballon d'Or nominations list. Adamola Lookman is on the Ballon d'Or nominations list. We've
gone downhill. We've gone downhill.
If we had have done it, I'd been saying we'd have a potential Ballon d'Or winner we've just brought at the end of the transfer window. But no, I really like the Sterling move, and we need to win now, and that's what that move is. That's a win now move. Look, I don't want to sound doom mongering, but I think we need a big trophy this season. I've mentioned it a couple of times. We've got some big contracts that we've got to sort out soon. Saliba's going to only have 2 years left. I think Saka's only 2 years left at the end of this season. I don't know what's going on with the manager. I think we need a trophy, and I think this is exactly what gets you a trophy: is someone who's already won them.
I love it. All right, let's talk about Champions League.
Yeah, I just want to add one thing on Raheem Sterling, which is just a massive, massive, massive thank you to Chelsea. Because there were two reasons why I had big question marks over Raheem Sterling. And that was the money of the wages and the potential fear that he wasn't motivated, that he's won it all, that he's on just a bit of a downward slide. And Chelsea Football Club managed to completely resolve both those issues. They said, here, we're going to pay 10 million for him to play for Arsenal this season. And we're going to give him the biggest motivation before every game that you could possibly have by literally ridiculing the guy and saying he's not good enough. Thank you. I mean, they've just resolved two massive issues for free. I mean, it's phenomenal. If we were worried that the guy didn't have fire in his belly, well, hell hath no fury like Raheem Sterling scorned, you know?
Oh, mate. He's got a lot of fire in his belly. He's done 2 Vindaloos in an evening. That's how much fire's in his belly. He looks fucked off, doesn't he?
Yeah,
he looks seriously fucked off. And I just checked as well. He is the 19th top scorer in the Premier League ever. So no, but I think you're right, Matt. Also, what a fucking basket case club they are. I know that we're not here to talk about Chelsea. Sancho? What is going on? Where are they going to play Sancho?
Matt, why don't you explain to the free-to-air audience your little theory that you have on Sancho and to Jacob, because he won't have heard it.
Yeah, I look at it and I said, this is a football club behaving like a private equity group. So rather than looking at which players fit into a system that can help you win trophies and looking at creating value that way. When I think about the All or Nothing documentary and you have that chart that's got 2 players in every position, rather than thinking about squad building in that vein, I think that what Chelsea do is they look like a private equity company buying a plumbing company or a roofing company or a data center, and they go, what is an undervalued asset that if we purchase it, we can increase the value of it? And I think they looked at it and they said, wait a minute, Jadon Sancho, promising young player, best player of his generation, or the perception was Manchester City IP, went for 80 million 2.5 years ago. If we can get him for 30, there's no way that we can't sell him for 50 in a couple of years. I think that's the way they looked at it. And I think if you close one eye, it's not an insane way to look at things. It's just not necessarily the right way to look at things if you're trying to build a functioning football club. But in terms of value, it's not the craziest idea in the world.
Jacob, you should be aware that Matt has a lot of friends that support Chelsea, and they've been in his ear because he's been saying a lot of weird things. Do you think that sounds like it has any sense to it at all?
Look, I think there's a lot of things that you could say that would somehow explain Chelsea's dealings in the market. I think you come up with a million theories. The problem is none of them all follow the same theory. Do you know what I mean? Like, if they were just buying like a certain kind of player, doing a certain kind of deal, you could make a case for it. But they're just doing everything. It's so scattergun. It's so.
They're all young. They're all young.
They're all
men.
Young. Well, yeah, they're all men and they're all footballers. That kind of groups it together a bit. No, you're right. They are all young, but I just feel for the manager a little bit. What the fuck is that dressing room going to be like? I mean, you can't even sit them all down. But how do you deal with it? Like, how do you deal? Like, if Sancho gets pissed off about not playing, what do you do with him? There's so many players there. It's such a recipe for disaster. And I think what's going to happen now, because I think we're all kind of agreed that, I think we agreed about 2 things. First of all, Enzo isn't going to be there for long because it's surely so combustible that it can't work out long term. But short term, there's so much talent on that pitch that they might get somewhere. So it's hard to guess where they end up this season, Chelsea. I do kind of think they might be 4th.
But this is what I said to Pete yesterday, and he systematically humiliated me by going through the Chelsea squad and going, what are you talking about? Because I was like, there's a lot of talent there. If you got rid of 10 players, if you
Here we
got rid
go.
of 10 players, and
Let's go.
he's going to do it. He's going to do it.
Okay.
right, let me
They've
try.
got 4 goalkeepers. They spent 2 years at this. Robert Sanchez booted out of Brighton for Verbruggen.
He's bad.
He's also not
He's
a
bad.
good goalkeeper. Philippe Jorgensen, no idea. Lucas Bergstrom. I mean, this is not looking good so far. Centre backs. Disasi, disaster. Badiashile. I think they were trying to get rid of him. Wesley
Hang on,
Fofana, always broken.
We miss Kukurea. Kukurea's good. Kukurea's good.
Kukurea got lumped over by Erling Haaland like a rag doll. He's got a lot of noise. He doesn't really hold up. Don't rate him. Levi Colwill, a lot of potential, hasn't really delivered there. Then we move into a Reece James, never available. Ben Chilwell, never available. Didn't they try and sell him to put him to play with the kids? Then
Gusto's good. Gusto's good.
Gusto's okay. Then we get into midfield. Enzo Fernandez. Fofana, he's always injured. He's been permanently injured. He's not going to get 50 games under his belt. Absolutely no chance. And didn't they try and sell him as well? Enzo Fernandez, massive machismo going on throughout his career. Climaxed when he did a little song with the Argentina squad, lined up with the black players of Chelsea to show that he actually wasn't a racist. Never seen a more racist thing in my life. Chuck Wemeka, didn't he get booted out on loan last season? Likely
committed career suicide.
Committed career suicide. Kieran Dewsbury Hall, who even knows why he's there? Caicedo, has looked absolutely terrible. He's the Basuma of Chelsea.
He's been all right. He's been okay, Basuma. Not Basuma, Caicedo. Caicedo's been all right.
Amari Kellerman wasn't here. PSR deal. Romeo Lavia, always injured.
Lavia's good. Lavia's good.
Always injured. Pedro Neto, always injured. Mikhailo Mudryk doing photo shoots with Hector views when he should actually be working on his game. Madueke, we like him, but he was rumored to be going. João Felix absolutely bombed at Atletico, bombed on loan. He's back there because they needed to buy him so Atletico could buy their captain. Nico Jackson just given a 9-year deal, largely mocked all last season. Christopher Nkunku, always injured. Jadon Sancho, do I even need to go there? Cole Palmer, decent. Mark Gay, 18 years old. What are we doing here? Why are we like? There's a lot of talent here. This could make top 4. Can you look at that squad? 1.2 billion. How is that better than Spurs, Liverpool, Brighton? Do you know what I mean? We all get this sense that what Chelsea have got going on could work. And let's cap it. Enzo Maresca. Enzo Maresca was absolutely ruined by Leicester fans. I'm out in the Midwest and I met a Leicester fan. He's like, I bloody hated Enzo Maresca. One-dimensional coach, really got on our nerves, nearly blew the championship. He's leading this charge. Do we still think that this is a team that's going to make top 4?
I can't believe we fell for. Do you remember when? It was just classic. But they said, De Zerbi, was it De Zerbi said Mudryk was a potential Ballon d'Or winner, and we all fell for it. Do you remember? We were like,
is it just the fall off of disruption? Is it when you are that young and you're disrupted and you're given a load of money, you end up going somewhere where you don't like, and it just messes with your brain? I mean, a lot of being a top footballer is in the head, right?
Yeah, I always just come back to with Mudryk. We wanted to spend, was it 70, 80 million quid? We matched Chelsea's offer. It was just the payment structure that got him to Chelsea. So surely there's something. I'm not saying I would have wanted him.
Well, did you hear that? Did you hear, Jacob, that they offered him on loan to us on the final day?
Yeah, and we said no thanks.
I mean, can you imagine what that does for his confidence, though? If you're that player, and then because imagine if it was him in all the videos banging them in and looking electric in training, he'd be back smiling again. But instead, we said no, you're going to stay in purgatory.
And I was told that Mikel Arteta was absolutely desperate for Mudryk, absolutely desperate. Personal visits, he went above and beyond to get Mudryk. He thought that this guy, he could turn him into an absolute monster. So how badly, and Arteta doesn't forget players. You know, he always goes back in for them. How bad has Mudryk been for Arteta to be like, 2 years after, like rolling out the red carpet to be not for me. I think some of it will be the professionalism as well, because he hasn't been very professional. He got done by Joey Swole for taking the mick out of someone in the gym. That's not an Arteta player. All right, let's move on to the final one. This story, these two stories blow my mind. They're going to do a Netflix documentary on these two stories. The Curious Tales of Osimhen and Ivan Toney. So Ivan Toney is earning £403,000 tax-free a week. I kind of get that story. But Victor Osimhen was talked about as a 120 million euro player at the start of the window. United were interested, Arsenal were interested, Chelsea were interested. And come the end of the window, no one had bid. And then he ends up going on loan to Galatasaray. Matt, Jacob, what happened here? I mean, it's a good player. He's won Serie A. You know, he was revered by the Napoli faithful. He's got every ingredient to be a Premier League striker, Drogba-esque. And then he ends up going to Galatasaray. What has happened here?
I'll take the Osimhen one first. I am pretty convinced it's down to what cut the agent wanted. I think he was involved in a deal or had signed a contract or had an agreement with an agent who wanted to take a really sizable chunk. And the reason that a fee of, say, 120 million worked was because it meant that everyone could do really, really well out of it. But I think the fact that he's ended up at Galatasaray, no one wanted to touch it. There was something wrong with the deal. Do you remember when Tevez and Mascherano were like part owned by
Kia?
I don't know, by Kia. They just owned them.
Yeah.
I feel like there must be something to do with that, because I don't understand why Manchester United would sign Xerxes when they could have signed Osimhen.
Jacob, you've got an agent. If your agent was like, listen, it can't be Ali Pally. It's going to be this tiny little bar in Nottingham because I'm not getting a big enough cut. How would you react? How do players get bullied like this by their agents?
Well, I don't know. Look, the problem is we don't know how much is the agent, how much is him. There were good, aside from the agent's cuts, there were a lot of reports that he wanted insane money, 400-500 grand a week to go to Chelsea. Is that the agent? Is it him? It's one thing I do know about having an agent. When you've asked for something unreasonable, it's very easy to blame the agent. It's very easy. Oh, sorry, no, it's my agent. It's not me. Don't you know? I just think with this guy, I mean, he's only really had one brilliant season. There's a lot of he made some nasty comments. The Georgian winger, whose name I can't pronounce, who plays for Napoli.
Alia.
Yeah, so
how it looks.
Yeah, good attempt, mate. He had some kind of like public spat with him because the agent said something about Osimhen and Osimhen said something back, and I don't know. There just seems to be a lot of arguing around this guy, and I know we're going to talk about Toney next. Ivan Toney seems very happy to just go, yes, please, I'll just take the money, thank you, and do it. You know,
400k a week tax free.
400k a week, and it's kind of a shame, but then I think when a player is fined for gambling, we're all very quick to go, oh well, you know, it's a, you know, football's a culture that's all surrounded by money and consumerism, and players are grown to just chase money and blah, blah, blah. You know, it's not their fault that they're gamblers. But then as soon as they want loads of money, we're like, oh, God, greedy bloody players. It's like, well, it's the same thing. The same reason he was chasing money from gambling. It's the same reason he wants to take a good offer from Saudi Arabia. This is a guy who was on less than 30 grand a week at Brentford. You know, he lost a year of his career. God knows what happened to his salary while he wasn't playing. I wouldn't be surprised if there was something in his contract that meant he didn't really earn his usual wage while he wasn't playing. I think you kind of have to say fair enough to him for taking that money. Whereas with Osimhen, as you say, he fumbled the bag. He mucked around too much and he misses out on a move. He's at Galatasaray now. Osimhen was spoken about as one of the best strikers in the world over the last couple of years. He's now at Galatasaray. God knows what happens in January. I mean, you wouldn't be surprised if Chelsea just went ahead and fucking paid him the 500 grand a week for 13 years or something insane like that. But I also don't think he's going to go anywhere near clubs like Arsenal.
What would you do? I'm going to give you an option. 2 years at Galatasaray or 2 years at Al Hilal?
Oh, allow all the way. Live in a palace, tax free. I think is the key to the Saudi deal, right? Tax free, and then if you're popular there, then Saudi give you a tourism deal for the rest of your life. I mean, Ivan Toney's won there. The difference between what his salary in the Premier League would be and what it is there is that he's got 2 generations of family that can live off the money that he's about to earn there. Like you'd have to, like when you earn 400 grand a week tax free for 4 years, you have to be really dumb in your post career to go broke.
You would have to have a really, really bad gambling habit to be able to spend that much money.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you'd have to be high rolling in Vegas every week to blow that.
I know just the guy.
Oh man.
So yeah, Ivan Toney. Do we think that it was a mistake by Premier League clubs to ignore him? I mean, this is a guy that gets goals. I don't necessarily think that
there must be a reason. There must be something that I mean, it could be. I wonder if it's a Tonali like situation where there's actually more like when you actually interrogate him.
Things that will get this podcast shut
No,
down.
I'm just saying, but there must be a reason because he's one of the best strikers in the Premier League and he was available on a pretty cut price deal and he wants to play more for England and the quality of the clubs were interested. Chelsea were desperate for a striker. Arsenal were interested in a number 9. There are a ton of clubs interested.
Spurs. They spent a lot of money on Solanke.
Like for him not to go to one of those clubs, there must be something behind the scenes, whether it be attitudinal, whether it be something completely left field. But there has to be a reason.
Or maybe it is we're just at that point in the Premier League where gambling as an addiction is seen as such a dangerous addiction to have because you can spend 50 million. I mean, like West Ham have gone from having a 95 million pound offer on the table from Manchester City to potentially having a player that could be banned. I mean, his camp, if he gets found guilty of those charges, no more career. I don't think insurance companies are paying out 95 million on the basis of that. So maybe it's just like, listen, we've got to de-risk our transfers. And if we're going to outlay 100 grand a week and spend a big transfer fee, we need to know that it's safe.
I've got another question for you boys. Solanke or Toney?
Oh. Toney.
Toney because he's been more consistent.
Yeah. Like his goal scoring record, his goal scoring record in the Football League was absolutely insane. Like I think he got like a 40 goal season in the Championship or something. He feels like a clutch player as well, you know. Toney feels like someone you want in a Champions League semi-final. I've said this a couple of times. I would hate to have played against him in a North London derby. If he had gone to Spurs, I'd hate to play him in North London. I remember it was 18 months ago, the game where they didn't draw the lines, where there was a goal. He boshed Saliba in that game. He moved Saliba around like I've not seen anyone else do.
I agree. All right. Well, that takes us to the end of a podcast. It wasn't very Arsenal focused, but it was a fun one all the same. No football for the rest of the week, guys. How are you going to spend it?
Thinking about the North London derby, I think it's just it's coming round, right? It's just always the first fixture you look for on the calendar. It's not ideal timing, I don't think, after an international break when you've got a little bit less time to prepare. I feel like when we have time to prepare under Mikel Arteta, our game plan is always spot on. We're missing a couple of players. I think we were talking about it yesterday. Even when we are at our very best and Spurs are at their very worst, it's a nightmare game. Can easily end up 1-1. So it's just always a bit of a lottery. They will be desperate to beat us, but I'm excited already.
Fantastic. All right. Okay. On that note, that takes us to the end of the podcast. This has been a Thursday therapy session. If you like this sort of content, you want the bonus content, you want it without the adverts, you go to patreon.com/the Arsenal opinion. And if you really like this podcast and you really want to give us a little present that's not monetary, you can give us a 5-star review, say something nice. We read all the comments and they help us get noticed. So thank you for that. On that note, I'm going to turn off the loop. I'm going to turn on that outro music and say ciao for now. Ciao for now.